In today's class, we are going to see image segmentation, and here mainly we are saying we are going to see today the techniques which are based on thresholding. In the next class, we will discuss few more techniques which are use different criteria. But in this particular class, we are going to discuss mainly the techniques which are based on thresholding. Okay, so this is the content, the agenda for this class. So we'll discuss few segmentation basics, and then we'll also see this overview of various segmentation techniques, where, as I said, we will be mainly focusing on this thresholding based techniques. And there are some region based techniques that we will see mainly in the next class, like region growing, region split and merge, water cell algorithm. These algorithms we will see in the next class. So let us first see what basically we mean by segmentation. So whenever we talk about segmentation in any image, it basically deals with partitioning of the image in such a way that in one partition you have homogeneous region, right? So for example, if you have an image like this and you have partitioned it into let's say the segments like this, then if you are saying that this particular area is one segment, then this means all the pixels, all the the area in that area particularly in that image has similar characteristics, right? And when we do this, this basically simplifies our representation, and also it provides some meaningful representation to the image. Okay? So this we can understand from here. So for example, this was the image and we have partitioned it into various segments. So now once this partitioning is done, then we know that this is one segment, this is another segment, this is another segment. So now we can actually perform certain more tasks on the image, or we can use this information and actually make use of this information in performing various different tasks. For example, one of the tasks that we can perform here is the object recognition. We have segmented the image in different parts, and considering that, let's say, different part is representing an object, then we can perform by considering that particular object or segment, we can find out what that particular object or segment represents. So once we have the segmentation, then we have more meaningful representation of the image, and this meaningful representation can be further explored and used in various applications. Okay, so that is why we are interested in actually performing the segmentation on images. So this, in summary, we can say that segmentation is nothing but labeling of pixels. So we are going to consider the pixels of the images one by one, and we are going to assign a particular label to each and every pixel in the image. And since we are saying that the same kind of pixels are grouped in one region, then we can say that all the pixels which are belonging to same segment or same region, they will actually have the same label. They will save the same label. So in this particular example, if you are saying that this particular area here, this is the bird. So you see all the pixels are almost having similar kind of characteristics. Similarly, you can see the other area. If you see the trunk of this object, this tree, then you see that all these pixels here, they have also similar characteristics. Okay? And we'll see how we can define these similar characteristics in coming slides. So what is the application of this segment? You can say the segmentation is used to locate objects and their boundaries. Okay. Now, when we are saying that we are segmenting the image in the homogeneous region, where in one homogeneous region the pixels have similar characteristics, this similarity can be defined in various ways, right? One of the criteria could be color. So all the pixels, if they have the same color, then we can say that they are similar. Or if it's a grayscale image, we can say if they have all same intensity, then they are having the same characteristic and they belong to the same region. Similarly, we can also use the textural information, and based on that, we can define the common characteristics. Okay. If you see this example here, you see that in this trunk part, if you just analyze, all the pixels do not have very similar color. There is some variation. But if you see the texture, you see that the texture is common. In this whole trunk, if you see this part, the texture of the trunk is common, right? Color may have certain variation, like you see there are some pixels which are appearing little white, there are some which are relatively little darker. But if you just analyze the textural composition of this trunk part, then we will see that this whole thing has a similar nature or similar characteristics of the pixels here. Okay. So when we are doing the segmentation, we'll find that the adjacent regions there, which are there in the that we get after segmentation, they will have significantly different characteristics. Right? So if let us say we have divided it into these segments, and if we just analyze this segment and this segment, we'll find that these segments, the adjacent segments, any adjacent segment if you take, they will have very different characteristics. If they do not have different characteristics, then obviously we would have got them merged. Then we would have not said that this is one segment and this is another segment. We would have said that both are the same segment. So that's why adjacent regions, if you analyze, then they will have very different characteristics. Okay. Mainly the segmentation technique can be categorized in two types. One of the techniques we can say are similarity-based techniques, where when we are grouping the pixels, actually we look for the similarity. And there are other set of techniques which are actually discontinuity-based. So in these techniques, we actually look for the discontinuities or the differences. So in case of similarity-based technique, we partition an image regions that are similar according to a predefined criteria. Right? We have already defined a similarity criteria, and based on that, we group the pixels and we partition the image regions. Common examples which fall under similarity-based method is thresholding-based technique, region growing technique, region split and merge technique. These are the techniques which actually follow the similarity-based criteria. In case of discontinuity, the methods which use actually discontinuity, they actually look for the points of discontinuity, for example, lines or the edges present in the image, then based on that, the partitioning is done. Okay. So similarity-based methods, as I just said, that thresholding, region growing, and region split and merge, these are the techniques which use similarity-based criteria. And in this, we are mainly going to discuss techniques which are based on thresholding in this particular class. Okay. Now, in the thresholding also, we can have multiple types of thresholding. Like we have a global thresholding, or we have adaptive thresholding, or we have optimal combination of global and adaptive thresholding. We'll see this one by one. Okay. So mainly, let us first discuss the global thresholding. So in case of global thresholding, as the name suggests, that is a global. That means when you are segmenting the image, there is one threshold which is used to segment the image. And in all the segmentation, all the segmentation techniques where we are going to use threshold, basically this threshold is going to be applied on the intensities of the pixels. Right? If it is a grayscale image, we are going to apply on the intensities. If it is a, let's say, color image, and we are going to use thresholding, then we will be applying thresholding on either one component of the color image or one or more components of the color image. Right? We'll see that example in the subsequent slide. But global threshold, wherever we are using the thresholding, this means there is a threshold, and this threshold is going to be applied on the intensities of the pixel. If the pixels are above the threshold, they will belong to one kind of segment. If the pixel is below threshold, then they will belong to different kind of pixels. For example, in this particular case, we see that there are some coins and a background, and our objective is to segment our coins from the background. So we know that all the coins have one kind of characteristic, and the background has different kind of characteristics. So we can, all the coin pixels are having a little lighter, and the background is dark. So we can use a threshold, and then we can apply the threshold on the image, and then we can get these coins segmented from the background. So in case of global thresholding, in the entire image, the same threshold is used. So to classify this particular pixel, whatever threshold we are using, similar threshold we are using to classify this pixel also, to classify this pixel also. So in the whole image, the same threshold is being used. Okay. So this is in case of thresholding, the correct segmentation is only possible when we have very clear-cut peaks in the histogram. If you see the histogram of this image, we see that there are two peaks. There's one here and another here. This basically says that there are two types of intensities present in the image. So if we have very clear-cut distinctions among the intensities which are present in the image, then we can put a suitable threshold, let's say somewhere here, and then say, or we can perform the segmentation. Right? If this kind of clear peaks are not there in the histogram, then it is difficult to use thresholding and perform the segmentation using the thresholding. Okay, so this is only possible when there are two clear-cut peaks. Maybe sometimes we may have multiple peaks also. But if you are, let's say, having we have one foreground and then another background, then in that case we'll have one peak for the foreground and another peak for the background. And based on this histogram, we can choose a suitable threshold which can actually differentiate foreground from the background. Okay. This was the use of thresholding on color grayscale image. Now it can be also applied on color images. If you remember, we have seen this example in one of the class. So here, let's say the idea is to segment the skin part in the image. We want two segments, one representing the skin part and another representing the background. And it is found that, and the segmentation, that example I'm showing here, is not in RGB space. The image which is given in RGB space has been first converted to HSV space, and it is found that the skin pixels lie in a certain range. They have certain kind of H value. So based on by putting the threshold, suitable threshold on the H value, we can do the segmentation. So in this particular case, we are only using the H component of the HSV space. Though there are three components, but we are just making use of H component. In some examples, if we see that the segmentation or the differentiation between the pixels can be performed by using the multiple channels or multiple components of the color image, then we can make use of that also. So when we are doing the thresholding, the thresholding or the threshold that we use, that can be actually characterized using this kind of representation, where we have three quantities that are listed here. One is the XY, which is the location of the pixel in the image. FXY is its intensity, and PXY actually defines some local characteristic at a particular point. And we are saying PXY, that can just define the local characteristic at XY. So FXY is the gray value at location XY, and PXY is some local characteristic at that particular place. And when we are doing the thresholding, and let us say if you are using just one threshold, so then all the pixels which are more than that threshold, they will be assigned one label. We can say that one label is 1. It can be any other value also. And all the pixels which are having a threshold, I mean the intensity less than this threshold, less than or equal to this threshold, they will be assigned a different label. And we are writing 0 here. But this 1 and 0 are just two labels. We can use any value. So let's say for one segment we can use let's say 200, and for the other segment we can use 100. So any value we can choose to represent the segments. Okay. Now based on what when we are defining the threshold here, based on this equation, what are the parameters that we are supplying in this threshold? Based on that, actually we can characterize the kind of thresholding that we are using. So for example, we are choosing the threshold which is like this, where we are just bothered about the intensity. Okay, we are not bothered about at what place that particular intensity is existing. So we can say that this is kind of global thresholding, because whatever intensity value you have, the threshold is just applied on that. So whether the particular pixel satisfies the threshold, it is just dependent on the intensity that it has. So we can say that in case of global thresholding, we have the equation this written like this. Okay. But if you are, let's say, defining our threshold like this, where xy and we have in threshold, we are defining it with the help of xy and fxy. this is kind of local thresholding, because when you are applying the thresholding, it is not just dependent on the fxy or the intensity, it is dependent on the location also where we are applying the threshold. So we can say that's a local. Now we can have a dynamic or adaptive thresholding, and this adaptive nature we can incorporate by using some kind of property in the when we are deciding the threshold. So if we have xy, pxy, and fxy all three, then this is a kind of, you can say, dynamic or adaptive thresholding. Okay. In this example, we see that there's one case where only one threshold can segment this image, and in this there's another example here which uses actually two segments to thresholds to segment the given image. I mean, we are assuming that this threshold has this histogram has been obtained from one image, and this has been obtained from another image. To segment this image, we just need one threshold, because here we have just two peaks. Here we have three peaks, so in this case, to segment this image, we need two thresholds. Okay, so if you have multiple peaks, actually we need multiple thresholds. And normally it is seen that wherever multiple thresholds are required, those actually segmentation in those kind of images that can be actually more efficiently performed using region growing technique. This technique we'll see in detail in the next class. So if you are using the multiple threshold, then how will you perform the thresholding? So in that case, based on the intensity and the relationship between the threshold that we are using, we have to label the pixels. So if you have, let's say, the two thresholds, then there are three possibilities. One when the pixels are less than T1, another where they are between T1 and T2, and the third possibility where they are more than T2. Okay, so since there are three possibilities, we are using three labels. We are saying the three labels are ABC. Now, these three labels, the value of ABC can be anything. It doesn't matter. So it can be maybe 50, B can be 100, C can be 150, and so on. So normally, whenever there are two components, so normally we assign the labels 0 and 1. But if we have more components, then we can assign any other any value. But normally, whatever the intensity or whatever the value you are assigning to the label, we normally choose such value which are actually different to each other, so that the segments can be visualized properly. For example, if you, let's say, choose A as 100 and B as 101, and both the intensities will look very similar. So if you are plotting the segments based on these labels, you will not be able to differentiate. So that is why when you are choosing ABC, you should choose some values which are a bit different from each other. Okay. Now, the success of actually thresholding based method, it all depends how well the histogram can be partitioned. So if the histogram of the corresponding image that can be partitioned in like two or multiple peaks efficiently, then the segmentation will be very successful. If the partitioning is not proper or well, then we will see that the results will not be that good. Okay, so for example, in this particular case, we see that the partitioning can be very easily done, so we get good segmentation. Okay, so there are a few examples where thresholding will be very useful. For example, this is the in this case, which is actually representing kind of industrial scenario where you have industrial tools and then you want to segment them from the background. So here it can be used. There is another application where the segmentation based on thresholding can be performed very well is the fingerprint image segmentation. When you want to separate fingerprint image from the background. There also mainly we have two types of intensities. One representing the fingerprint pixels which are black, and the background which is normally, let's say, white. So then we have very clear cut two peaks, and then by using a suitable threshold, we can very easily partition this. Okay. But please remember that this thresholding based technique is only applicable in certain cases. It's not. It doesn't provide a very generic way of doing the segmentation. Now let's briefly see. Given a histogram, how to find out a suitable threshold. And in this example, we are assuming that we have only two peaks in the histogram. So to decide the correct value of the threshold, we can do we can follow this algorithm. This basically says that you randomly select any threshold on this range. So let's say your values are from 0 to 255. So you just select blindly any threshold at some place here. And based on that threshold, you select initial estimate of the threshold t. You can just you can have a random threshold selection, or maybe you can apply some usually you see, and then you apply some heuristics to initialize the threshold value t. But this t is going to change. It's not the final one. Based on this whole algorithm, we can we can modify this t and get a better t. So this algorithm, the first step of this algorithm says that you just take one initial t and then segment the image using this t. So whatever the threshold we have chosen, let's say this threshold, based on this threshold, you segment the image. So all the pixels which are in the image which are falling below this, they fall in one group, and then other pixels which are actually more than this threshold, they will fall on the other group. So now after applying this threshold, we find that there are some pixels which are in one group, there are another pixel which are in the other group. Now it says that in the third step, you have to take the average gray level of the these groups, G1 group and G2 group. We have formed the G1 and G2 group based on the threshold. So mu1 is the threshold of the mean of first group G1, and mu2 is the threshold of the second group. Sorry, mu2 is the mean of the second group. Now, once we have the mu1 and mu2, then you take the t as half of mu1 plus mu2. Okay, and then in the next step, again apply this t to segment the image. And so after third step, you have to again go back to second step, and then we have to again come back to the fourth step. Basically says that you have to go back to second step, and then you have to iterate through these steps. And we'll keep doing this unless we find that the two subsequent t does not change much. Okay? And if we iterate through this, we'll see that we'll find an optimum t which will provide us the best segmentation results. Okay. Now let us analyze what is the effect of noise in thresholding. When we are doing the segmentation based on thresholding, what is the effect of the noise? How does it impact the segmentation results? So we can understand that with the help of this example. So if you see this example here, we have only two types of intensities: one white and another, you can say, let's say, a little dark. White, I mean, like lighter and darker, you can say. So we have a very two clear-cut peaks here, like this peak and this peak. Only two intensities, very clear peak, very easily you can do segmentation. Now, when we added little noise on this, we see that these images, these peaks actually became little wider. Okay, but still you see that you can put a threshold here and then do the segmentation. But as you keep increasing the threshold, we see that these the peaks become wider and wider, and they merge with each other. So when the noise becomes too much, it looks that we cannot separate the foreground and the background. Right? So addition of the noise is a problem in the thresholding these techniques. So all these three cases that we discussed in the previous slide, they are here. In the first case, there was no noise. In the second case, we have added Gaussian noise where the mean is 0 and standard deviation is 10. And in the third case, again, we have added the Gaussian noise, but here the standard deviation is 50. So the amount of noise that we are adding in this step is very, very high compared to this step. That is why you see here the peaks have got merged. Okay. Now let us see the role of illumination in thresholding. In the previous case, we have seen the role of noise in thresholding, and we see that the presence of noise badly impacts the outcome of the thresholding based segmentation technique. Now let us see what is the impact of illumination on the thresholding. So before understanding this, let us first understand this, how the image is formed. So there is one theory which says that when you are talking about an image intensity fxy, it is actually the product of ixy and rxy, where I is the illumination component and R is the reflectance component. This basically says that suppose there is an object here, and which you want to digitize. That means you want to take the you want to make the image of this. So you are actually throwing some light on this. I mean, exactly what we do in case of camera. So if you want to capture the image of this, we throw some light on this, and then whatever the light goes back, that light is actually recorded in the camera and based on the images formed. So this theory says that whatever intensity you are going to get when you are going to capture this image, this fxy, this is actually the product of how much light you have thrown on the image, on the object, and what is the reflected value that you got. Okay? So we have two components here: reflective illumination component, which is actually the property of the light source, and the reflectance component, which is actually the property, in some sense you can say, the property of the object. Okay? So this theory says that fxy is actually the product of ixy and rxy. Okay? For simplicity, we can take the log of it. So if we just take the log of it, then let's say this fxy, log of fxy becomes zxy, and this zxy is equal to log of fxy, which is log of ixy into rxy, which becomes log of ixy plus log of rxy, and let us say this log of ixy is I prime xy and r prime xy. Okay, so in the simplified equation, you can say that the zxy is actually a combination of I prime xy and r prime xy. Okay, now we'll analyze these components to see how this illumination and reflectance they are impacting the thresholding techniques. Okay. So now so in general, when only reflectance component is present and illumination is uniform, the models in the histogram can be more easily separated. When we have only reflectance component and we have uniform illumination, then it turns out that the thresholding based techniques will have, I mean, they will be successful because the peaks in the image can be separated. Peaks in the histogram can be separated well. And we can note that the reflectance is usually not uniform. Why it is not uniform? Because this is the characteristics of the object. It depends what kind of object we are capturing. But illumination can be made uniform because it is in our hand. So let us say if you have to digitize and you have to capture the image, then we can find out a suitable place where we have a uniform illumination, and then we can take the picture. So the second thing, this illumination part is in our hand, but reflectance does not it is not in our hand. But as we see here, it says that if we can even have the uniform illumination, then also thresholding based illumination will be successful. So whenever we have varying illumination, then in that case separation of the foreground and background will be difficult. But if you have uniform illumination, then based on thresholding, it can be easily done. Okay. In the subsequent discussion, we are actually going to use these results. So just remember, says that if let's say you have two random variables and which are independent, then the histogram of their sum is the convolution of respective histograms. Okay. Please remember this result. We are going to use this. It says that histogram of, you have two random variables, and we are trying to find out the sum histogram of the sum of these variables. So this statement is saying that the histogram of the sum is going to be the convolution of the histogram components or respective variables. Okay, and this we are going to use the two components that we are going to talk about here. They will in our in this discussion, one is going to be actually illumination and another is going to be the reflectance. Okay, so from the previous discussion, we know that this our image zxy is equal to I prime xy plus r prime xy. So as we know that this I prime and r prime, they are independent, because I prime is the property of the source, and r or I basically, which is coming from the illumination, this is the property of the source, and r which is coming from the object, and this is the property of the object. So they are independent. They don't have any relationship. So since we know that I prime is independent of r, from the probability theory, the result that we just discussed, that can be actually applied here. So if you want to compute the histogram of Z, then we can say that this is nothing but the convolution of I prime and histogram of I prime and histogram of R prime. Okay. Now let us consider the two cases. One case where the histogram is constant, sorry, the illumination is constant, and another case where the illumination is not constant. So now you see the first case. Let us say in this case Ixy is constant. So now when Ixy is constant, I prime xy or log of Ixy, this will be also constant. So when you are saying that illumination is constant, this means that first component is constant. So when first component is constant, I prime is constant, its histogram will be impulse. Okay, there are two types of histogram we can say. If let's say in our histogram we have just one line like this, one peak, we can say this is an impulse. But if you have a histogram like this, we say that it's a pulse. Impulse and pulse. Impulse has just one value, pulse has this kind of distribution. So when illumination is constant, then the histogram of I prime will be an impulse like this, just one value. So we can very easily visualize that if you are convolving histogram of R prime by histogram of I prime, we will get more or less the same histogram, because if you can see this example here, let's say convolve this image by this histogram by this histogram, then the output is going to be very similar to this histogram, because this is just a peak. Okay, so in case when the histogram is the illumination is fixed, illumination is constant, we see that histogram of Z will be same as the histogram of R prime. Okay, so it is not impacting actually the histogram of R prime. Whatever histogram of R prime you have, the same histogram you are going to get for the Z. So you can say that when the illumination is uniform, the histogram is not substantially affected. Now, but when the histogram is when the illumination is not uniform, the I prime is going to be kind of pulse like this. So when I prime is like a pulse, then this pulse is I prime is also pulse, and obviously the reflectance will not be fixed, because normally we have objects which have varying characteristics over the surface. So when you are actually convolving I prime, which is a pulse, with the R prime, which is again a pulse, so we will see that in this case the output or the histogram that you are going ultimately for the Z, that will be like a very smeared histogram. You can say like this. Okay, so in this, if the histogram becomes like this, then you can't actually separate them in pixels in foreground and background. So that is why when the illumination is not uniform, thresholding based techniques are actually face problem. Let us discuss the limitations of the global thresholding, or in general you can say even for the thresholding here. So in case of global thresholding, particularly, it is only applicable when we have a very clear-cut foreground and background, and that is only possible in few applications where we have like controlled environment. The two examples that we have seen here, like fingerprint and industrial applications, there this kind of technique will be successful. Now, when the illumination is uneven, in that case, this global thresholding is not going to be applicable. Then we have to go for the adaptive thresholding. That means the same threshold which we are going to use on the entire image is not going to work. In that case, we have to actually use different thresholds for different areas. So if you are going to use different threshold for different areas, then obviously you have to actually segment your images into, you have to divide your image into sub images, and then we have to apply the thresholding. Okay. So in case of adaptive thresholding, as I explained earlier also, the threshold is actually based on location of the pixels. Now, when we are saying that we are going to do adaptive thresholding and we are going to subdivide the image, the question comes how to perform the subdivision and then how to estimate the local threshold. Okay. So we'll understand this first, the use of partitioning in this example, and then we'll see how to compute the threshold. So here we see that this is the image given. Now, if you just use And you see that in this image, the illumination is not uniform. In this side, it is a dark region, and this side is a little brighter region. So when you are using a uniform, I mean a global threshold, you find that this is not segmented properly. Like in this particular region here, the object, this particular part is not properly segmented. When we are using the adaptive thresholding, up to some extent, we have been able to successfully segment this object. So here only the problem is coming only in this part, the part where I have just highlighted, where we have put the rectangle. And a similar kind of problem is actually in this part also. So let us first discuss this particular part. Okay. But from this picture, we can understand that if you are using the adaptive thresholding, then the segmentation results are better compared to if we would have used the global thresholding. So now here, wherever we see that the segmentation is not proper, then in that segment, actually, the partitioning needs to be further done. You see that in this region, the segmentation is not coming proper, or in this particular region, the segmentation is not coming proper. So then we have to do further partitioning. In this case, we see when we let us consider this whole thing as one segment. So in the previous case, this was here, this has issues, but here in this particular case, when we are considering this particular part as one segment, we have clear-cut two peaks, and then we are able to differentiate these two parts here. Okay, this part we are going to we are able to separate properly, but this particular region here, we see that this partitioning is not enough to segment this particular region. Okay. So this particular rectangle actually saying that in this particular region, this size of the segment is okay, the size of partitioning is okay, but in this particular region, the second region here, the size of the partitioning is not fine. If you choose that size, then we see that still the segmentation results are poor. So how to solve this problem? So again, the solution comes from the subdivision. Further, you have to subdivide this region. So in place of considering that this whole thing is one region, we have further divided into several subparts. So when you divide into subparts, then you see that in this particular part, the segmentation is proper. In the other parts, obviously they are, I mean, like having one kind of pixel, so they are properly partitioned. But even where we have two types of pixels, that part is also partitioned properly. Okay, so up to what depth you have to divide, that again depends on the problem, what kind of image we have, and based on that we have to see up to what level we should actually go. Okay, so this is the overall summary of the results that we have seen in the previous slide. Now let us briefly discuss how to select optimal global threshold when we are doing the adaptive thresholding. Okay. Now here our objective is, whenever we are saying that we are choosing a good threshold, what basically we are looking for? We are looking for a threshold which can segment the pixels properly. That means if the pixel was foreground pixel, then it is able to say foreground pixel, and if it is a background pixel, it is correctly able to say that it is a background pixel. So we want to basically minimize the segmentation error. Now segmentation can be error in the segmentation can be in two cases. One where the foreground pixel is said as background pixel, and another where the background pixel is actually said as foreground pixel. So here, when we are selecting a good threshold, our objective is to actually minimize the average segmentation error. Why we are saying average segmentation? Because we want to take the average of the two errors. One error where foreground is segmented as background, and another where the background is segmented as foreground. Right? So we want to actually take the average of these two errors, and wherever this we get the minimum error, that particular threshold is going to be considered as optimal threshold. So this is the criteria we are going to use here. Okay. So now let us say that the image contains two principal gray level regions. Let's say one has the intensity denoted by and the overall intensity is denoted by Z. And since we have the two gray level regions, when we see the plot for the histogram for this image, we see that there are two peaks, one here and another here. Okay. So we can assume that these two principal gray level regions, one denotes the foreground and another denotes the background. So you can consider that this one of the plot here, or one of the function here, P1, let's say, is denoting the background, and then P2 is denoting the foreground. Okay, so these are actually, we can consider that they are the gray level probability density functions for these two regions. Okay? For simplicity, we can assume that these two regions are foreground and background. So given these P1 and P2, this is small P1 and P2 in the previous case here. With the help of this, actually, we can define the PZ. PZ, P1, P1Z and P2Z, they are actually the distribution for these foreground and background, and P1Z is the actually distribution for the entire image. So if you know that the probability, if you choose a pixel P1, if you choose any pixel Z, and the probability that it belongs to foreground is P1, and the probability that it belongs to background is P2, based on that, actually we can define PZ. We can say that PZ is nothing but equal to P1 times small p1z plus p2 times small p2z, where p1 plus p2 is 1. Okay, because if any pixel you are choosing, if its probability is x to belong to foreground, and if its probability is y to belong to background, then the sum of this is going to be 1. So that is why we are saying this. This is our p1 and this is our p2. So p1 and p2, they are the probabilities of occurrence of object and background pixels. Okay. Now, what is our objective? As we discussed, we have to select the value of t that minimizes the average error in making the decision that give pixel, that a given pixel belongs to foreground or background. So, if you just analyze this distribution, what are the places where this error can happen? So, if you see here, let us say we are going to choose this particular threshold, okay, or some threshold here. Okay. Now, when let us first see this distribution one by one. So, when you are choosing P1Z, anything that is below P1Z, actually that says that that particular pixel is a background pixel. Okay? Assuming that P1 is background. But suppose you choose a threshold T here. So, this threshold T is saying that anything which is this side is background, anything which is this side is foreground. Okay? Now, if you choose this criteria, then we see that all the pixels which are in this image, in this plot, which are falling here in this area, though they belong to the foreground background, but because of this threshold being placed here, they will be actually classified as background. Foreground. This is the background. Let us say this is background and this is foreground. So all the pixels that I have shaded here, though they belong to background because they are falling below this PDF, but because the threshold is being placed here, they are termed as foreground. Similarly, all the pixels which are here in this area, they are actually part of the foreground pixels, but because the threshold is being placed here, we are saying that they are actually the background. So whatever error that we are going to get in this classification, that is actually going to come from this region and from this region, because all the pixels which are here, they are classified as background, because this is a threshold and they all are lying on the left side of the threshold, so they are background. Similarly, all the pixels which are in this region, they are correctly classified because they are on the other side of the threshold and they are classified as foreground. Only these pixels which I have highlighted here, which I have shaded here, they are actually the error. So this error can be easily computed by computing the area under these curves in these particular regions. So to compute the first error, we can find out what is the area here in this particular region. So this to compute the area in this region, we can integrate this particular PDF from minus infinity to T1, because this area is only shaded till T1. And what is the curve above which we need to integrate? This is a P2. So we are saying P2Z dz from and we are integrating from minus infinity to T. That means this is giving us the area, this first area. And similarly, to get the second area, this one, we are integrating the first function P1Z from T to infinity, and this is giving us the second error. So if you want to find out the total error, then this is going to be summation of E1T and E2T weighted by their probability, because when we are selecting any pixel, we don't know whether it's foreground or background. So the probability that it belongs to background or the probability that it belongs to foreground, that need to be multiplied here to get the overall errors. So using this, we can define that ET is nothing but equal to P2 times E1T plus P1 times E2T. Okay. Now, if we differentiate this error and equate to 0, we'll find that this will be equal to this. Why? Because when we are differentiating ET, this will be P2 differentiation of E1T, and if you go to E1 definition of E1T, you see that this is integration. So when this is integration, when you are doing differentiation, this you can say in some sense nullifies the integration, and then you just get the function that you have here. And in this case, this is from t to infinity. So if you are writing it from infinity to t, you have to put a negative symbol. So that is why. And so by incorporating that sign and by differentiating this and putting it to 0, if you just solve this, you will find that this will be P2 P1T equal to P1 P2T. So optimum threshold can be actually found now by solving this equation. What we want, why we actually differentiated and kept it to 0, we want that this error should be 0. Okay, the maximum error that we want is, we want to minimize the error actually, right? So whenever we want to minimize or maximize any function, what we do, we just go for differentiation and put the value to 0. So that's what exactly we are doing here. We are differentiating it and then equating the differentiation to 0 so that we get the optimum value. Okay. So so what basically we are saying, what is the summary of these two steps? It says that if you want to choose the optimum threshold, that is actually going to come from this equation. Okay. So we have to choose such threshold T which gives us P2 times P1T same as P1 times P2T. Right? That's the criteria. So if we assume that the P1, if P1 and P2 are same, then this basically says that the optimum threshold is where P1Z and P2Z are same. And what is the place where this P1Z and P2Z are same? As a place where they are actually intersecting. Because when the two curves are intersecting to each other, wherever they are intersecting, that means at that place they have the same value. So if the P1 and P2 are same, then we can say that the optimum threshold will come at the place where these two curves are intersecting. Okay. A more analytical way, if you just want to compute the threshold T, we can assume the nature of these distributions, and normally we see that these distributions are Gaussian in nature. So we can assume that these individual probability densities that we have used P1Z and P2Z, they follow Gaussian distribution, so they can be replaced by Gaussian functions. You can assume that the first one has, to define any Gaussian, we need two parameters, mu and sigma. So for first one, we can assume that its mu is mu1 and sigma is sigma1. In the second case, we can assume that this is mu2 and sigma2. So by replacing the P1Z and P2Z by their elaborate analytical expression in terms of the Gaussian probability distribution function, we'll see that we get this equation for PZ. And if you just apply the same mathematics that we have used here and solve it, we find this simplified equation for the threshold T. Okay. Now in this, again, we can see that if the P1 from this equation also, if we see that if P1 and P2 are same, then you will have log P1 by P2 as 1. So this means this becomes 0. So threshold T is in a simple manner the average of mu1 and mu2. And it is the same as true if the variance is 0 for these distributions. If we find that the distributions for P1 and P2 that we have considered, if they have variance 0, in that case also you'll find that the second term will be 0, and you will get T as mu1 and mu2. What is the case when this variance is going to be 0? This means you have just two peaks in the histogram. One peak here, another peak here. If your peaks are like this, then that means they have the variance. Okay. When you are saying variance 0, this means you have a kind of impulse histogram. Okay, so by using these analytical expression, also we can optimally calculate the threshold. So, for example, we want to use, let's say, this expression. So, from the given distributions, we have to find out what is the mu1 and mu2, and then based on those mu1 and mu2 and the sigma, based on that we can just evaluate this expression and then compute the optimum threshold. And okay. Fine. So with this, let us conclude today's class.